In modern society, early success is often seen as a clear sign of ability and direction. Those who quickly settle into a career, build a position, and form stable relationships from a young age are often viewed as being on the right path. But not everyone enters life at the same pace like that. Some people grow up with the quiet feeling that they are always moving a little more slowly than others, that they need more time to understand themselves, and that sometimes they must pass through years of uncertainty without knowing why. What is rarely spoken about is that this feeling of being out of step is not always a sign of indecision. From Carl Jung's perspective, some people are not shaped to mature quickly according to social standards, but to mature deeply according to a rhythm of their own. They often have to pass through periods of solitude, doubt, and searching before they gradually begin to see their true place in life. And that journey, which may appear delayed from the outside, often becomes the foundation for a more stable and meaningful kind of success later on. If you feel that you are moving more slowly than others, stay with this journey to the end to understand why sometimes maturing later is not a sign that you are going in the wrong direction, but a sign that you are becoming yourself. 1. Rare personalities often feel different early in life. From a very young age, some people quietly realize that the way they experience the world is not the same as that of those around them. They are not the loudest children in the classroom. They are not the quickest to respond in conversations. Instead, they observe more than they participate, think longer before they speak, and feel things that sometimes even they cannot yet name. In educational and social environments that often value quick thinking, adaptability, and integration, this type of personality is easily misunderstood. They may be seen as quiet, hard to read, lacking confidence, or slower to develop compared to their peers. But what they are experiencing is not a delay. It is a different rhythm of development. Not everyone begins that journey at the same time. Some begin very early, but in a very quiet way. People with this kind of rare personality pattern often grow up with the feeling that the world around them moves faster than their inner rhythm. When others easily blend into groups, they remain on the outside observing. When others quickly choose goals and pursue them, they take time to ask what truly matters. When others build identity by adapting to their environment, they build identity by listening to themselves. In Jungian psychology, this is often related to a psychological structure in which inner life plays a central role. Instead of forming identity mainly through fitting into social expectations, they develop identity through observation, reflection, and feeling. This makes it difficult for them to quickly integrate into systems designed around agreement and speed, but at the same time, it creates a very deep foundation for later growth. Many of them remember this feeling clearly from childhood. They remember standing among friends, but not truly belonging. They remember thinking about questions that felt larger than their age. They remember not being able to explain why the things that excited others did not touch them in the same way. Experiences like these often lead a child to begin doubting themselves. And in a world where similarity is often seen as a sign of normality, difference is easily misunderstood as something wrong. Jung called the part of identity we build to fit into society the persona, which can be simply understood as a necessary mask for living in a community. The persona helps people integrate, cooperate, and be accepted. But for those with deep inner lives, this mask rarely fits them completely. They still wear it, but they always feel there is something else inside. The feeling is like wearing a shirt that fits everyone else perfectly, but feels slightly tight on you. Over time, many people learn to hide this difference. They become easier to understand. They say more appropriate things. They choose more reasonable paths. But deep inside, the sense of being out of rhythm is still there. What matters is that this feeling is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that another process is unfolding. People who develop identity through observation and reflection usually do not build their lives by copying available models. They need time to recognize what truly belongs to them, and it is exactly that period of time that makes them appear slower than others. You can imagine this through the story of Ursula K. Le Guin, one of the most influential writers of 20th century literature. When she was young, she was not someone who quickly stepped into a writing career with a clear direction. In her early years, Ursula spent much of her time reading, observing, thinking, and living in her inner world. She grew up in a family with a strong academic foundation, where asking questions about human beings and culture mattered more than achieving early results. This shaped her development in a way that was very different from the usual rhythm of society. For many years, she wrote, but was not widely published. Her early manuscripts did not attract attention. Her literary path did not begin with early recognition. It was not until she was nearly 40 that she published works that made the world begin to notice. But what mattered was that those works did not come from a quick decision. They emerged from an inner life that had been nurtured for a very long time. Later, it was precisely her depth of observation of people, society, and invisible psychological structures that allowed Ursula K. Le Guin to write stories that were not only imaginative, but also explorations of identity, freedom, and the inner growth of human beings. What once looked like a period of slow development was in fact a time of gathering strength for a very distinct voice. When a person grows up with a strong inner life, they often spend many early years observing before acting, feeling before choosing, and understanding before committing. This makes them less suited to systems that evaluate people based on speed of adaptation or early achievement, but it is also what helps them form a more stable foundation of identity. Perhaps you have experienced this feeling, the feeling that you need more time to understand what truly matters. The feeling that you cannot follow a path just because it looks reasonable on paper. The feeling that there is always a question inside you that has not yet been answered. These feelings are not signs of delay. There are often signs that a process of becoming is already taking place from very early on, like a seed that lies deep beneath the soil for many years before it begins to sprout. Some people need more time to grow their roots before anything visible can appear above the surface. And sometimes, it is exactly those years that seem out of rhythm that help them step into maturity with a clearer sense of who they truly are. But what very few people tell them when they are young is this: that feeling of difference is not the end of the story. It is only the beginning of a deeper journey. In the next part, we will look together at something that makes many people anxious: why a deep inner life often makes success arrive more slowly, yet also more steadily in a very different way. 2. A deep inner life delays early success. A deep inner life is a gift, but in the early years of life, it rarely looks like an advantage. It often appears as slowness, hesitation, difficulty fitting in, and sometimes the feeling of always being one step behind others. One idea from Jung sheds clear light on this state. The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. Some shoes fit others very well, but for someone with a deep inner life, they begin to hurt from the very first steps. That does not mean they are weaker than others. It simply means their inner structure is different. They cannot live for long inside a pattern that does not truly belong to them without paying the price in inner tension. That is why they often find it difficult to achieve early success by ordinary standards. Early success in modern society usually requires several very specific qualities: making decisions quickly, adapting quickly, accepting the rules early, knowing how to present oneself, and attaching oneself to a clear role. Meanwhile, people with a deep inner life need time to agree with their own choices. They need to feel inwardly settled before taking long steps forward. They cannot live only from surface-level reasoning, because beneath that layer, there is always a deeper part quietly observing. For people with a deep inner life, the persona is only an outer garment, not a true home. If they are forced to live too early and too long inside a role that does not belong to them, they begin to feel tired in a way that is difficult to explain. Outwardly, everything still looks fine, but inwardly, it feels as though they are breathing with someone else's lungs. This is something many people do not recognize when they look at their delay. That slowness is often a form of protection, helping them avoid building their lives on a foundation that is not authentic. Others may choose quickly because they mature by adapting to their environment. This type of person matures through deep inner agreement. When that agreement has not yet appeared, they pause, hesitate, or change direction. From the outside, this may look like indecision, but from the inside, it is the way the soul protects itself. Manny's story helps make this clear. He grew up in a working-class family in the suburbs, where success was usually understood very simply: secure a stable job early, follow the expected path, start a family at the right time. Manny did not oppose those things. He had simply never truly felt that he belonged to them. Since high school, he had been quieter than his friends, not because he was shy, but because inside him, there were always too many unanswered questions. After graduation, Manny chose a fairly stable job in sales. The income was enough to live on, and the environment was not bad. But after some time, he began to feel exhausted in a way he could not easily explain. He did not hate the work. He only felt that he was being forced to become a version of himself that was not real. Each morning felt like putting on a set of clothes that looked right to others, but was too tight across his chest. After several years of trying to endure it, Manny gradually realized that this feeling of being out of rhythm had been with him from very early on. He could not live for long inside a choice simply because it made sense to everyone else. Later, he left his old job, returned to study, and then moved into work at a community library. The new work did not make him more successful, but for the first time in many years, he felt that he no longer had to split himself in two just to keep going. Manny's story shows something very important. Sometimes failing to succeed early is the way the psyche protects us from living a life in the wrong direction. People with a deep inner life do not easily advance within systems that require them to betray their intuition. Yet that very difficulty helps them avoid going too far down a path that does not belong to them. Their hesitation, if we look closely, is not only fear. Often, it is the quiet intelligence of the deepest part within them. Jung used the word self to describe the deepest center of a person, not the social role or the surface ego, but the living core of an individual's life. The self is like an inner compass. It does not force. It simply creates a feeling of misalignment when we move too far away from who we are. People with a deep inner life are often more sensitive to that compass than others. Because of that, they also suffer more when they live in the wrong direction. Yet that same sensitivity later becomes a strength. It makes them build their lives more slowly, but more truly. Early success is often praised by society, but not every kind of slowness is failure. For people with a deep inner life, the unstable years at the beginning of life help them distinguish between what is expected and what truly belongs to them. They are not slow because they are less capable. They are slow because they cannot live for long on a false foundation. And when they look back, many people come to understand that what once worried them most was actually a sign that something deeper within them had always been guiding the way. For that reason, their journey may be slower at the beginning, but that slowness is not meaningless. It is like a quiet pause before a person truly begins to take shape. And when that happens, they not only find direction, they also begin to understand why they had to move so slowly for so long. 3. Feeling lost is part of forming the self. As people enter their 20s, many begin to see their lives more clearly. They choose a career, set goals, and gradually feel that they are moving along a definite path. But for those with a deep inner life, this stage often unfolds differently. Instead of becoming clearer, things feel more uncertain. Instead of settling down, they change direction, hesitate, or keep asking themselves whether the path they are on truly belongs to them. From the outside, this is easily misunderstood as indecision. But inside, they are not only choosing a job, they are facing a deeper question. If the expectations of others were set aside, who am I really? Because of this, their sense of being lost is not simply confusion. In Jung's view, it is often a sign that a deeper process has begun, the process of individuation, the journey through which a person gradually becomes who they truly are, rather than only becoming a version that fits the society around them. Like a tree that does not try to grow into the shape of other trees, but begins to grow into its own natural form. This is a beautiful process, but it is rarely comfortable. To become oneself, a person often has to pass through a stage where they can no longer fully believe in their old identities. Things that once seemed reasonable begin to feel unfamiliar. Goals that once felt right no longer provide inner support. Plans that reassured others begin to feel suffocating to them. And when this happens, they begin to feel lost. One idea from Jung opens this doorway clearly. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. Many people in their 20s are still looking outward to find a model for their lives. But rare personality types often begin looking inward earlier. And once that process has begun, they can no longer easily rest on borrowed choices. That is why they often ask questions that many people only begin to face in their 40s or 50s. What am I living for? What in this life truly belongs to me? What have I chosen out of love? And what have I chosen only because it reassures others? These questions do not help them move faster. On the contrary, they slow them down, sometimes even bring them to a stop. But the cost of this slowness is often far smaller than the cost of living too far along the wrong path. When a person does not ask these questions, they may build their life quite quickly. They learn to adapt, meet expectations, and step into recognized roles. There is nothing wrong with that. But for people with a deep inner structure, if they try to live that way too early, a quiet tension begins to appear inside them. For those who feel lost in their 20s, what is often happening is that the old persona no longer fits. They once believed in it, once tried to live according to it, but one day they realize they cannot go any further wearing only that mask. This is why their period of feeling lost is often more painful than others realize. It is not only about not knowing which career to choose. It is the feeling that an old outer layer is cracking, while the deeper self inside has not yet taken a clear shape. They are no longer the person they used to be, but they do not yet know who they are becoming. That state can easily make them afraid. Human beings naturally want certainty, and nothing unsettles us more than losing an old map before a new one appears. It is like a caterpillar inside a cocoon. From the outside, it looks like a still stage, even a trapped one. But inside that cocoon, the old structure is dissolving so that a new form can emerge. If we look only with ordinary eyes, we may call it stagnation. But if we understand the inner process, we see that it is a transformation. Some people cannot grow by accepting a ready-made identity. They need to pass through a period of uncertainty to filter out what is not true. They need to live with questions long enough for the answers to stop being the noise of society and become the deeper voice of their own life. While many people are building position and image on the outside, they are quietly building structure on the inside. It is the capacity to know what they truly believe, where they can no longer continue living in pretense, and what genuinely holds meaning for them. This inner foundation is not easy to see at first, but in the long run, it determines how steadily a person can live. So the period of feeling lost is not always a sign of failure. Often, it is the time when a person is separating from borrowed identities to form a stronger inner core. That time can feel lonely. It can feel slow, and it can make them believe they are falling behind. But it often helps them avoid building an entire life on something that is not true. If you have lived through a period like this, perhaps the hardest part was not the uncertainty itself, but the feeling that no one understood why you could not settle down as early as others. Yet sometimes, that very experience is a sign that you are not lost at all. You are gradually becoming yourself. Thank you for coming this far into the journey of this video. If what you have just heard touches something you have lived through, stay with it patiently until the end, because the rest will help those scattered pieces come together in an even deeper way. 4. Persona, shadow, and loneliness are necessary. In the journey of growth for people with a deep inner life, there are 3 challenges that almost always appear and are difficult to avoid. They are the persona, the shadow, and a lasting sense of loneliness. These may sound abstract, but in truth, they are very close to everyday life. They are not only concepts in psychology, they are what a person quietly lives through while trying to exist in this world without losing themselves. People with rare personality patterns often realize early that they do not naturally blend in as easily as most others, so they learn to observe their environment and adjust themselves to fit. They know when to stay silent, when to smile, and when to appear fine even while feeling tired inside. Because of this, they build a persona that is dependable and easy for others to trust. But the longer they live inside that image, the easier it becomes to drift away from what is true within them. This feeling is like wearing a set of clothes that looks right to everyone else but feels tight on you. They are not suffering because their outer life is too difficult. They are tired because they must use too much energy to maintain a version of themselves that reassures others, while the more truthful part inside them grows quieter and quieter. One reflection from Jung opens exactly this point. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. A person does not become whole by keeping only the bright and acceptable parts. Real growth begins when we dare to look into the deeper parts, including those we once tried to avoid. Jung called that part the shadow. In simple terms, the shadow is made up of the parts within us that were once rejected or hidden away, such as fear, anger, feelings of inferiority, the need to be recognized, or emotions we believed we were not supposed to have. The shadow is not something bad. It is like a dark room inside the psychological house we live in, where we place the parts that were not welcomed. Many people spend most of their lives avoiding that room, but for rare personality types, this is often not easy. Because they live closer to their inner world, they become aware of their inner contradictions earlier than others. For that reason, they often have to face the shadow sooner than most. This process is not comfortable. It can leave them confused and doubting themselves. But if we look more deeply, it is a necessary step, because when they dare to look into that darker space, they no longer have to run away from themselves. And from there, they begin to live more honestly, more lightly, and more fully. A friend of mine, Sarah, went through a journey like this. She is in her 30s and works as a project manager at a media company. From the outside, Sarah appears calm, reliable, and always knows what needs to be done. Friends come to her to share their concerns. Colleagues trust her. Her family is proud of her. But what few people see is that each evening, when she returns home, Sarah often sits for a long time in her dark kitchen without quite knowing what she is sad about. As she grew older, she felt more accepted, yet less understood. She did her work well and maintained kind relationships, but she increasingly felt that this life did not truly belong to her. She had built a persona strong enough to carry her through life, but not real enough to allow her to rest inside it. The change began on a very ordinary evening when Sarah realized that she was angry. Angry because she always had to be the understanding one. Angry because she had never allowed herself to say that she too was tired and needed to be seen. Instead of pushing that feeling down as she had before, she began to listen to it. And gradually, Sarah understood that behind that anger was a deeper sadness. She had lived too long in ways that reassured everyone else, but very rarely in ways that allowed her to truly live. That was the moment when the shadow began to become conscious, not to destroy Sarah, but to bring her closer to her true self. She began to say no in places where she had always said yes before. She stopped trying so hard to be the most composed person in the room. She accepted that she also had needs, limits, wounds, and even parts that were not very beautiful. Strangely, the less she tried to be perfect, the lighter she began to feel. Alongside the persona and the shadow, there is almost always a sense of loneliness. This is a very quiet kind of loneliness in people with deep inner lives. They may talk, work, and be among many others, yet still feel that the deepest part of themselves is never truly met. This kind of loneliness does not come from having no one nearby. It comes from not being able to bring their whole self into a relationship and still feel safe. For rare personality types, this feeling often lasts longer, not because they are too difficult, but because they need a more genuine kind of connection than their surroundings usually allow. And before they can find that with others, they often have to learn something harder, how to live with themselves in silence. In this sense, loneliness is not only a form of pain, it is a transition. Like a seed resting beneath the soil before it begins to grow, the period of loneliness helps them step away from outer approval so they can build a stronger inner core. After passing through that time, they become less dependent on always being understood or confirmed by others, and that is a very deep kind of freedom. This is why the persona, the shadow, and loneliness are not just random difficulties. They are necessary trials. The persona shows them who they had to become to be accepted. The shadow shows them what they had to reject to maintain that image. Loneliness gives them the quiet space to listen to who they truly are beneath all those layers. After passing through these 3 trials, A person begins to live less for the gaze of others. They no longer need to shine in ways that are easy for others to recognize. They are no longer so afraid of the darker parts within themselves. And it is at that point that a deeper transformation can truly begin. If you see yourself in Sarah's story, feel free to share your own story in the comments. Something you once thought was too personal to say out loud might be exactly what helps someone else feel a little more understood. 5. Living in alignment becomes the turning point. After many years of observing themselves, trying different directions, and sometimes passing through periods that felt deeply lost, a quiet shift begins to take place in the lives of people with a deep inner world. This shift is not a dramatic decision made on a particular day. It does not look like a turning point that is easy to see from the outside. It feels more like a gradual inner steadiness that appears as they begin to stop trying to become the version others expect them to be. This is often the moment when they realize that most of their earlier years were not meaningless. They were a preparation. In Jung's psychology, this shift is connected to a person gradually living closer to the self. If the persona is the mask that helps us adapt to society, the self is like the inner axis that helps us keep our direction as we move through life. The self is not a role. It is not a title. It is a very simple but very clear feeling. I am living in a way that is true to me. Before this stage, many people with a deep inner life often live in a state of scattered energy. One part of them wants to do what is right for their family. One part wants to do what society recognizes. One part wants safety. Another part wants to live honestly. When these parts pull in different directions, they easily feel tired without knowing why. Not because they are weak, but because they are trying to walk several paths at the same time. Yet when the process of individuation has unfolded long enough, these parts begin to settle into place. Not all of them disappear, but they no longer conflict as strongly as before. Some choices that once seemed very attractive begin to feel unnecessary. Some fears that once felt overwhelming become easier to understand. Some roles that once felt essential begin to loosen their hold. What changes is not the outer world. What changes is the place they stand inside themselves. They begin to make decisions based on what they truly believe, rather than what they think they are supposed to believe. This is the turning point. What is striking is that this turning point is rarely loud. It does not look like a dramatic change, such as quitting a job overnight or transforming one's entire life in a single moment. It usually happens in very quiet ways. A person begins to say no in places where they once always tried to agree. A person begins choosing work that feels meaningful, even if it is less recognized. A person begins to stop comparing their life to someone else's timeline. From the outside, no one may notice that anything major is happening, but from the inside, a new axis has formed. It is like realigning the steering wheel of a car after driving off course for a long time. When the wheel is misaligned, the driver has to hold it tightly just to keep the car moving straight. Driving becomes tense, even if the driver cannot explain why. But once the wheel is properly aligned again, the car naturally moves forward more smoothly. The driver no longer has to use as much effort as before, not because the road has become easier, but because the direction is more true. Inner stability works in much the same way. When a person begins living closer to their true self, they no longer need to spend so much energy maintaining an image in front of others. They no longer need to keep proving that they are good enough. They also no longer feel the need to explain every choice they make. More importantly, they no longer have to convince themselves that they are on the right path. They begin to truly know what belongs to them. One clear sign of this stage is that they become less dependent on external recognition. This does not mean they stop caring about others. It simply means they no longer need others' approval to trust their own choices. This is a very deep form of maturity. For many years at the beginning of life, most people build their identity based on feedback from their environment. People with a deep inner life often take longer to arrive at this point. But when they do, their clarity is usually more stable. In Jungian psychology, when the different parts of the inner world begin to come into better harmony, psychological energy is no longer scattered. Jung called this energy psychic energy. It can be understood simply as the level of inner vitality a person carries. When this energy is no longer pulled in opposing directions, it becomes more focused. And when energy becomes focused, a person naturally becomes clearer in thought, more consistent in action, and calmer in the face of social pressure. This is why many people with a deep inner life begin to find their lives easier to breathe in the later stages, not because they face fewer difficulties, but because they are no longer living two lives at once. One life for others to see, and one life they quietly try to protect inside. When those two lives begin to become one, energy returns. Confidence appears. Not the kind of confidence that needs to be displayed, but the kind that no longer needs explanation. At this stage, personal identity is no longer something they have to prove. It begins to show itself naturally. Others may notice this in the way they speak more slowly, but with greater certainty. In the way they choose fewer things, but choose more truly. In the way they no longer try to take part in comparisons that are no longer necessary. Most importantly, they begin to trust their own rhythm of development. This is the turning point many people once thought would never come. But in truth, it was always there. It simply needed time to appear. And when it does appear, they often realize something very simple, but very deep. They were never truly moving in the wrong direction. They were only walking a path that needed more time to become clear. 6. Their success comes later, but lasts longer. For people with a deep inner life, success rarely appears as a sudden turning point. It does not arrive in the form of a single day when everything changes completely. More often, it comes very slowly. So slowly that for many years, they are not sure whether they are moving forward or simply standing still. But when they look back over a longer stretch of time, they begin to notice something important. What they once thought was slowness was actually a period of preparation. What they once thought was being lost was actually a process of realignment. And what they once believed was falling behind was often a sign that they were building a different kind of foundation from most people. In the early years of life, many people try to reach positions, titles, or recognition in order to feel that they are good enough. That is completely natural. But for those who have passed through a process of inner individuation, success is no longer an answer to the question, "Am I valuable enough?" It becomes a natural expression of living in alignment with their inner structure. In Jung's psychology, when a person begins living closer to the self, their actions and their inner life no longer move in separate directions. It is like two rivers that once flowed side by side without meeting. When they finally join into a single stream, the current becomes stronger, clearer, and less divided. That is why their success often arrives later. Yet when it comes, it tends to be more stable, partly because they do not choose their path too early just to satisfy outside expectations, partly because they spend many of their early years understanding themselves before deciding what to build their lives on. and partly because they no longer need to keep reshaping themselves to maintain an image that was never truly theirs. This often makes them especially suited to fields that require long-term thinking, work that depends on careful observation, roles that call for the ability to see systems as a whole instead of reacting quickly to each small situation. They are not usually the ones who make the strongest impression in the early years, but they are often the ones who can go very far once the road becomes longer. In my university class, Helen was one such person. For nearly 10 years after graduation, she worked in several different roles in administration and office management. None of the jobs was wrong, but none of them made her feel that she was truly in the right place. She carried out her responsibilities well. Her colleagues trusted her. Yet inside, she always felt she was standing in a temporary position without knowing where her real place was. At the age of 38, after many years working inside organizations, Helen began to recognize that what she did best was not managing daily tasks, but seeing the points of confusion within how systems functioned. She could notice what others overlooked. She could sense where connections were missing, where energy was being wasted, where structure needed to change instead of people. At first, she did not think of this as a skill. It came to her so naturally, but it was precisely this ability that later led her into a new field, consulting on workflow improvement for small organizations. This work did not make her stand out immediately, but for the first time in her life, Helen felt she did not need to try to become someone else to do her work well. What changed was not that she became more intelligent. What changed was that she began working in a way that matched how her mind had always functioned. This is a very common pattern among people with a deep inner life. When they are young, they often try to adapt themselves to existing systems. But as they mature, they begin to realize they were not designed only to adapt. They were designed to see the deeper structure of those systems. And once they begin working from that place, success is no longer something they have to chase. It begins to catch up with them. If a bridge is built quickly on unstable ground, it may appear complete very early. But over time, weaknesses beneath the surface begin to show. By contrast, a bridge built more slowly, because the designer spends time studying the ground, adjusting the structure, and strengthening the foundation, may take longer to complete. Yet once finished, it can stand firmly for decades without major repair. The lives of those who mature later are often like this second kind of bridge. Another important feature of this kind of success is that they are less likely to face an identity crisis in midlife, not because they avoid difficulty, but because they have already passed through the difficult part earlier. While many people begin asking, "What am I living for?" in their 40s or 50s, they have already been living with that question for a long time. This allows them to enter maturity with a more consistent sense of who they are. They do not need to change direction completely to rediscover meaning. They only need to continue moving more deeply along the path that has already been forming inside them for many years. For that reason, their success is often not loud, but it has depth. It is not a destination. It is a state of stability between who they are inside and the life they are living outside. And when a person reaches that state, they often realize something simple yet profound. What they once called arriving late was actually arriving at their own right time. From the perspective of depth psychology, the delay experienced in the early years by rare personality types is not a sign of failure. It is often a natural part of inner development. While many people stabilize early by adapting quickly to social expectations, they need more time to understand who they are, and what truly belongs to them. They move more slowly, but they move more deeply. It is precisely that period that once seemed like being lost that helps them gradually release borrowed identities and build a more authentic foundation for their lives. When inner life and outward action begin to come into alignment, they not only find clearer direction, but also begin to feel more at peace with themselves. That is why their success often arrives later, but with greater depth and endurance. What matters is not whether you arrive early or late, but whether you are living in a way that is true to who you are. If you see yourself in this journey, take a moment to like this video, share it with people who may also be moving through a similar experience, and subscribe to the channel to continue following the videos ahead. Perhaps in the stories that are coming next, you will find more pieces that help you understand yourself more clearly.